Welcome to the Stanford Medicine X Halftime Show. This program is a live recorded broadcast and tweet chat that runs each day of the 2016 Medicine X conference. The aim of this program is to engage and include our online audience in conversations happening at Medicine X and on our social media channels. The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of the individual participants and not those of the Stanford University School of Medicine or the conference organizers. If you are joining us live, keep in mind that there is a simultaneous conversation happening on Twitter right now using the hashtag MedX. Lisa Bernstein, also known as It's the Bunk, is the online moderator and will be taking questions from social media. So please make sure to start up your Twitter client to join in the online conversation and interact with today's speakers. Please note you are watching a live online program and there is a delay between real-time events and the live stream you are watching. Tweets from our in-studio guests will appear before you see the real-time events they are tweeting about unfold on the video live stream. The topic of today's show is, what does patient centricity really mean to pharma? In this episode, we are going to be discussing how big pharma can engage patients on an individual level and direct care to their needs. With us today is a diverse panel of pharmaceutical industry leaders with expertise and interest in healthcare innovation, including Brian Loew, CEO of Inspire, a company that creates a safe place for patients and caregivers to support and connect with each other online. The goal of this program is to hear from our guests, have them share with us their views on these issues, and of course, to answer your questions out there from our viewing audience on Twitter.
Hi, welcome to our halftime show, MedX Live, here at Stanford Medicine X. I'm Michael Sears, patient in residence at Stanford. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Brian.
Hello.
Brian Loew, CEO of Inspire, and our two guests today. We have Greg from GSK and we have John from AstraZeneca. I should remind all of those on Twitter, please, you're welcome to share your comments, use the hashtag MedX Live, tweet us any questions. This is an interactive discussion. We'd like to hear from you throughout the course of the next half hour. So gentlemen, an easy one to begin with, the last couple of years, things have changed. The role of the patient has changed, and the way that you guys, I guess, engage with patients has fundamentally changed. I guess I'll start with you, John. How do you get your head around that?
So I've been in the industry for a long time, so 29 years. I really think the last 4 have seen huge changes in that space. And I guess what we've tried to do is look at the people that are our patients and what they're experiencing, and then try and live up to some of those expectations. Because I think that's the key, Michael, for me, is that the expectations of the people who are taking our medicines or who are sick are changing based on their overall experience. And so we've tried to look at that and then adopt some of the tactics that others are using, and looking at user-centered design to bring in that real patient idea and need, make it more present within the organization, and then see how we might be able to address it.
And Greg, similar challenges?
Absolutely. So my perspective comes from the pharmacovigilance side, which is around drug safety. In the past, it's been more of a passive process of really involving the patient, where individuals calling in, reporting adverse events, etc. But really, there's been more of a shift towards being more proactive in that, as far as we've actually moved to doing more social listening, really trying to go out and seek information, seek patient inputs as it relates to the safety and the benefits of our drugs, rather than a more reactive or more passive process. And I think the real shift has been realizing there are certainly risks associated with that, but the value of protecting our patients far exceeds the risk. So actually, companies are now definitely willing to take the additional risk because of the value that it offers of putting the patient at the center of everything that we do.
And I think a theme at Medicine X certainly yesterday was this kind of word about bravery. And actually, it's quite brave for you guys in your industry to really want to engage with us and change it around. You talk about regulation, you talk about what you are restricted to and you can. How has that now seen that bravery sort of starting to transform the cultures in the companies, would you say? I mean, Greg?
Absolutely. So one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received from an attorney, a couple of years ago, we went to our head of our dispute resolution group, and asked them, what are the risks, what are the challenges, and they actually felt that it was far more, it was riskier not to be seen as being as proactive as possible and putting patients at the center rather than being scared of the risk associated with it. So it's actually more brave not to do it. So they were very encouraging that it's worth the risk. It's not about being brave, it's really about doing the right thing. And they were very supportive of us doing it.
Yeah, and I think for us, I think we have found good partnerships with advocacy groups in order to make us a trusted partner, right? So by ourselves, I think lung cancer patients, and we've done a lot of work in that space, kind of raised an eyebrow at first, but the fact that we had good partners that they were familiar with, that were in the room with us, really, I think, warmed the idea, and that made our intentions known and shared with the advocacy groups. I think that's been a great partnership.
Yeah, and Brian, I'm guessing every patient that comes to Inspire is going to talk about their treatment. Sure. Pharma's probably in one of the first sentences that they start engaging. Right. And you've got to, you use patients, you engage, you have a really great community. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, at Inspire, we have very large patient community, particularly in oncology and rare disease and large chronic conditions. And we also have 100 national patient advocacy partners, like the American Lung Association for lung cancer. And what we have found is that patients increasingly want to have a dialogue not only with their doctors, but they want to know that they can reach out to the manufacturer of the drugs that they're taking. And it's, I think, encouraging to hear that patients actually want to ask questions of the manufacturers of the drugs and finally have channels where they can get feedback. I think it used to be more difficult to get feedback from companies, and these are two great examples of companies that are reaching out and are willing to have a conversation with patients in appropriate ways, and I think that didn't used to be the case.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you're in an environment like this where, in a sense, healthcare's been democratized and everybody is part of the same conversation really goes to the way everything's working. I guess patient centricity has almost become a buzzword, a marketing tool. Is it something that is a flash in the pan? Is it something that will be sustained now? Has the model really changed? Or is this because patients are asking more and then you just,
Sure. Go ahead, Greg. No, so I absolutely believe 100% that really is the future. That's something that's here to stay. And I would even take patient centricity to the next level and actually patients being viewed as partners throughout the process, even more so than just being at the center of what we do, but they should be partners at every step of the way. I really think, based on the way things are changing, that this is going to be the new norm for the industry going forward.
But that creates challenges, I'm guessing, at the moment. That shifts and real challenges to truly partner.
It does, but it's also the right thing to do. So whatever the challenges are, we have to address those. There's not a lot of regulations on some of these areas, but it's just something we have to go through as a community to figure out how to address those challenges in a way that's ethically, morally, and legally correct, but still put the patient at the center of everything that we do.
I think there is an element of keeping up in terms of patient centricity, because when you think about it, the science is becoming more and more patient centric, and genetic tests and diagnostic tests being able to help prescribe which medicine is right and what the responder population is going to be. So the science has become more patient centric, I think. And as a result, I think we create expectations in the community of patients that we're planning to serve with a medicine about what else do I need from you in order to make the outcome of my medicine the best it could possibly be.
That's a great point. I mean, patients can contribute so much to medical progress. I think a lot of people have always believed this, but it seems like finally in the last even 5 or 6 years that a lot of value is being directly recognized from patient participation.
Yeah. I should just remind everybody on Twitter, again, use the hashtag MEDEX if you want to interact with us. We are taking questions live from Twitter, so feel free to share your thoughts and views with Brian, Greg and John and myself over the course of the rest of this discussion. We talked about maybe regulatory changing, the landscape changing. You guys are sitting here together talking the same language. Is there a drive collectively by pharma? Do you come together to change those rules together? How does that work?
I think this is as close as we've been.
Yeah, and trust me, we squeezed you in.
I guess I'm less familiar with that, Greg. So,
so I can definitely touch on that. On the drug safety, the pharmacovigilance side, our view is always that patient safety should never be a competitive advantage. So there's a lot of collaborations that across the different pharma and the regulatory industry in this area. There's a large European project called Web Radar, RADR, that's focusing on how social listening, and patient involvement can improve the science of drug safety, as well as all the pharmaceutical companies tend to work together behind the scenes towards a common goal. Because again, patient safety is something that should never be a competitive advantage. I take products that my company doesn't make, and I want that company to do as good a job as we do, hopefully, in protecting our patients.
And I would just add, like with the more and more combination therapies that are going to be real for patients, I think it's unlikely that one company will be able to supply all of that. And
exactly,
it does bring us into each other's world. So
yeah, cool. We've got Alyssa Koppler joining us on Medicine X. Alyssa, send us your question or give us your opinion, and I'll get the gentleman to answer you directly. Keep using that hashtag MedX, please. John, I've got a passionate interest about technology.
Yeah.
You do a lot of work in that technology space. Does being engaged with the patient and working in technology, does that just feel a natural fit? Is that a great way to start to engage patients?
I think it is, and I guess I look at how much behavior has changed with the way we carry these around, and I've got this cool gadget on mine that lets me attach it to other things that I carry around. So I think there's been a huge shift in behavior that has been predicated on the use of the technology. And one of the things in medicine that is incumbent is behavior change. And it could be as simple as taking your medicine, but everything is like diet and exercise. And those are other elements and behavior changes that need to be embraced, I think. And we've done some work, for example, in the heart attack setting with how do you coach people after a heart attack in order to make some of those life changes that need to be made. So it's difficult space, but if you can get patients more engaged in their treatment, then there is an opportunity for them to have a better outcome. Those things we know from other parts of the science. And so this, I think, is a great tool in order to engage people. And I think some of the sessions here today even talked about the seniors, talking about 85-year-old patients with diabetes and how they're integrating and interacting with their devices. So it's happening. I think we shouldn't be afraid. We should embrace it, and we should try and export maybe a new experience as opposed to just translating an old experience into that patient population so that they can get more out of their medicines.
And I mean, listen, yours is a technology platform. You're engaging online and on mobile and whatever. Do you see that shift to engagement, technology coming
Absolutely.
through engagement?
Today, 50% of our users come to Inspire through their phones. Another 20% are on tablets. Only 30% are on traditional desktops or laptops. And we want to make the experience great for all of them. And using a phone, as you know, opens all sorts of methods for data input and real-time usage that wasn't available before. It's absolutely crucial. But I guess fundamentally, also, we believe that the technology really is a means to an end, but the desire to do these things has existed all along.
Yes.
Right? It's just making available something that people have always wanted to do.
So we've got doctors, we've got patients, we've got nurses online at the moment. Kadir, send us your question. I know you're following us on Twitter. Use that hashtag MedX, and we will answer as soon as we possibly can. We talked yesterday at the conference a bit about clinical trials and the changing landscape of clinical trials and to make them a bit more patient-centric, potentially. Are there examples within your companies of how that model is starting to change, or is there a mindset change that you feel is happening? I mean, Greg?
So I'm not directly in the clinical trial space, but absolutely we're starting to have that discussion about how patients can be more of a partner throughout, even before the clinical trials start, as far as helping us assess what attributes of a drug are important, designing the clinical trial, all the way through the registration process. So as you mentioned, the technology really is an enabling technology that now allows us to reach a large number of geographically diverse patients. And those discussions absolutely are starting to happen about how can now that expand beyond what we're doing in safety to support the drug development process. So we do keep patients at the center of those activities.
And I think it is coming, Michael. And one of the things we've realized is that the problems that our clinicians are trying to solve in trials are some of the same problems that our commercial colleagues are trying to solve in that part of the basically finding the right patients and keeping them on therapy, right? Finding the right patients for a trial, keeping them through the duration of the trial. It's the same problem. So ideally, some of the same solutions should apply. And beyond that, I think that we have at least one trial where there's an opportunity for the patient to self-adjust their dose based on a response to any toxicities, and that's done through an app, right? So it's happening. I think it's still easier to do it the old way, but I think it's going to be better outcomes the more we embrace the new. Yeah.
So Marie Ennis is joining us at JBBC on Twitter. Marie, you should be here. You shouldn't be on the live stream. You should be here. Come here next year, please. Don't forget #MedX. I've got a question on Twitter to share to both of you, and I'm sure, Brian, you'll have an opinion. How can pharma companies help build health equity and improve population health? We could probably have a whole session on this. And health views. Who wants to jump in first? I'm kind of putting you on the spot with these questions. I realise that.
Yeah. So I think there is an opportunity in of large populations that are out there. Like we've got a program in Healthy Heart Africa, trying to really change the hypertension landscape, which there's a disproportionate investment in healthcare in the HIV world in Africa, and patients that have more usual illness get a slightly different standard of care and just the diagnosis and treatment. So I think there is an opportunity for us to play in that landscape, and AstraZeneca has chose to play in that game, and trying to make a difference in how hypertension can have an effect on heart and then family health.
Yeah, and kind of taking the other side of that, certainly by engaging patients more in the discussion. For example, we can look for things such as disease outbreak, antibiotic resistance, etc., that can allow us to be better prepared to meet when crises emerge, whether it be the SARS, the Zika outbreak, and other things. By being in touch with them, that way we can make sure that when there is an issue or crisis that occurs, that we're prepared to handle it much earlier in the process.
And I'm guessing you've got such a diverse population. Sure. You've got patients from all over the world in your communities. That's right. So are the conversations the same dependent on where they are?
We see disparities and differences in access to care and exposure and affordability and reimbursement. One of the areas that we've found where pharma companies are playing a role already, but many patients don't know about it, is with patient assistance programs, where many times programs exist, and what we find is that patients in the communities are letting one another know about the existence of programs that have already been in place. So the community serves a good function that way.
A question for you guys. Do you ever see a time that a pharmaceutical company or company might have a chief patient officer sitting on the board? Could you actually imagine that happening? Be honest with me, we're only live to a few million. Don't worry.
So yes, I can see that happening, right? I hope that my company's one of the first ones that does that, right? So I don't think we're there yet, but I think that idea is in there, and I think as other industries go from marketing head to customer experience head, I think we're seeing that shift in some of the peer groups outside of pharma, and I think that might be a natural next step for us, is to be thinking, do we have a chief marketing officer, or do we have something else that's probably more in touch with the community we're trying to serve?
Yeah, and we've started taking steps in that way. We've actually at GSK just have a very senior level person just named to be our patient engagement accountable person. So we're starting to go down that path, to increase the visibility and the importance within the company.
Okay, Brian, sorry.
Most of us have some medical issue. No, almost none of us has no medical issue, and it seems that in today's culture we're much more willing to share the fact that we have a condition. I have one. Most of us have one. Greg shared with me last night and might want to talk about his own experiences, and I think that the willingness of people at pharma companies to talk about about their own medical experiences adds an enormous amount of authenticity to what they're talking about with treatment.
And I think it's important to note that even though we work at pharma companies, I'm first a patient. I'm also a caregiver to somebody with a chronic disease. I'm also a healthcare professional, and then I'm a pharmaceutical company employee. So I tend to view things much more through the patient and healthcare lens than I do as a pharmaceutical company employee.
We've got just under 10 minutes left on this live stream. So get your questions, comments in, use hashtag MedX, and we've got a few minutes left to answer a few questions still to go here. We've talked about technology. In fact, we've talked about a whole broad spectrum of things. Do you ever see a situation as we move potentially to more outcomes-based solutions that patients might be given technologies by your companies as opposed to a drug? So, does it have to be a pill, so to speak, always?
So, unfortunately, I know very little about it, but GSK just announced a collaboration with Google to actually start working on non-chemical-based various treatment options based on technology rather than on molecules that we create traditionally in a chemical lab. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about that, but it was a joint venture that was just announced within the last month or two of us partnering with Google.
So it's being seeded. And John and yourself, do you see? I know there's a lot of innovation going on in your group in particular.
I think some of our investigational science units are looking at that as well. But I guess I still think of us, we're a pharmaceutical company, and medicines will be the core of our business. I like to think that even today there's an opportunity to think about the way you serve your patients alongside those medicines that will make their hopefully right service gets a better medicine serves them better as well. So I think that's the next step where there's plenty of ground to take, and then eventually we're going to see devices that are having a difference for patients. You're seeing some of it here this week.
Yeah, and we see pharma companies sometimes they invest in device companies, then they kind of pull back and it goes back into the molecules, and you see that dipping in and out, and I'm sure you get a sense of that technology might be a solution or an outcome to solving a problem as opposed to just pharma, and I'm
certainly patients talk about all of the maybe the line between medical devices and things that we carry around all the time like phones is becoming much less distinct than it used to be.
We've got first of all to say hi to Marvin. Marvin's at Marvin Calderon. He's a friend of Medicine X and patient scholar here. So Marvin, we need your views, please, to Medicine X. We also had a question come in about can pharma find a way to address the side effects and around medications, and almost look at solutions around side effects as much as the pill, as much as the drug themselves. So I'm guessing maybe that's where other tools can come in to play a role. So it's more than just here's a drug, take it, and whatever happens.
So there's a concept that was included in the Food and Drug Amendment Act of 2007 called RAMS, which stands for Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategy. It's not unlike the stock market. Well, the stock market, you have certain risk associated with it. Certain risks are diversifiable, certain risks are non-diversifiable. So with all drugs, certain risks are diversifiable, certain risks are not. So we've actually started going beyond just adverse events, trying to identify are there other activities that we can do that would minimize the risk, whether it be a drug that may cause a particular birth defect, minimize use in women of childbearing potential, etc. So certainly that's become much more prevalent within the industry as far as trying to figure out more than just saying adverse events, but actually trying to maximize value, minimize the harm to create the greatest difference between those two as possible.
And I think of it as that patients they're on a journey with their disease. I think there's also a medicine journey that goes with it, and there's a way for us to improve that journey from our perspective. So how do we integrate into their lives better and look at, I think if we understand the problems or what those toxicities could cause, problems they could cause, then you're going to be better able to position technology as a potential solution.
And I think that ties in back to the beginning. You made a comment with people. It's not just about being a patient. You've talked. You're a caregiver. Pharma, being part of pharma companies is the bottom of the list. You're X, Y, and Z first. And I suppose that's where the growing role that communities like Inspire will play. You're able to really deliver data better outcomes?
Right. There's a lot of data now. Patients are sharing experiences and looking to optimize, forget about the side effects question, but optimize the positive aspects of a treatment, right? And what they realize is that getting the most out of a treatment is about more than just bringing it home from the doctor, but it's about a two-way conversation with their doctor about optimizing dosage and all sorts of other things around that. And they're getting a lot out of the community, figuring out how to get the most out of the treatments they're taking.
So we've literally got a couple of minutes left here. Time flies when you're having fun. We've got lots that we could talk about. Those of you still in, we've got 2 minutes left. Use the hashtag MEDX if you want to ask or make any comments in the last couple of minutes. I guess I'll use it for each of you to wrap up your thoughts really around the role of the patient in the company. What does the future look like? Project me forward 5 years, if you will. Maybe John, you'll start, and then I'll hand on to Greg. And I'd actually like to give the final voice to you. Where does Inspire go to its patient community? We'll try and do that in 2 minutes.
So I would like to think in as we go forward that we're going to really know our patients, and by know you understand their needs, you understand their disease, their genetics. Like the know will continue to be expanded, I think, in terms of definition. And with that know, we should be able to better serve them in the way we invent our medicines and the way that we bring them to patients, delivery systems, the whole spectrum of what delivery to a patient means. So I think it's got to be central, and it's got to be a way that we have an intimate knowledge of them.
So certainly anything we do, we want the patient to be at the center of what we do, and we want patients to be partners throughout the process with us. We're still figuring out as a community how to do that. So certainly conferences such as MEDX, I think, is fantastic at figuring that out. But it's also something that we're not going to figure out how to do that. We actually need patient input to help figure out how we can better put them at the center and really partner with them so they can have the best outcomes they can.
Brian?
Sure. Well, I want to thank John and Greg for being such voices of the patient for their companies. To say that we think the future of this is that patients will continue to play a key role in acceleration of medical progress, working with scientists to do so. And the goal is really for all of us to live well and to live healthy lives.
So I'd like, first of all, to say thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. And if you want to get hold of Greg Powell, you can go to LinkedIn and connect with Greg. He's happy to chat to you. John, thank you very much. You're relatively new to Twitter, but we're going to share at jmac_coach so we can bombard you with questions. Yeah. You're there. Brian, of course, you can get hold of Brian personally and also at Team Inspire. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, everyone, for connecting. We'll be back tomorrow with the final live MEDX show, a halftime show. So thank you for watching.
Thanks so much for joining us today for the Stanford Medicine X halftime show. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 12:45 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, when we'll discuss the topic Cancer Moonshot: How Can Patients Fuel Change? Moderated by Michael Sears with a panel of patients and patient advocates. You won't want to miss the next episode of the Stanford Medicine X halftime show. For all of you out there taking time to tune in with us today, thank you for joining us and being part of the conversation. A special thanks to our guest panelists today. Please stay tuned. We will return shortly, continuing our main stage conference programming with world-class speakers.